I'm Connor Rebush, and if you are interested in the finer points of face punching, you've come to the right place. This is Heavy Hands. Hello and welcome to another episode of Heavy Hands. As always, I am your host, Connor Rebush. Unfortunately, Patrick Wyman is not able to join us today, but I am very happy to be sitting here with Joe Delguyd, head trainer of the Old School Boxing Club in Cleveland, Ohio, and boxing trainer for Strong Style MMA, which hosts a lot of impressive fighters you may have heard of. Until very recently, Cody Garbrandt, Jessica Ai, Stipe Miocic, who fights this weekend, and very recently, a new addition, Matt Brown, Cincinnati's own. So we're here with Joe, and Joe, in case you haven't heard the show before, we tend to talk technique, training, strategy. We're trying to talk more specific fight-related things. So, like interviewing coaches.
I hate to give up secrets now.
I won't ask for any tricks of the trade.
We don't necessarily do it like everyone else does.
Okay.
So,
well, if you want to hint to some secrets, that's certainly your prerogative. I won't stop you.
I just hate to ask to God. You know, what's funny is, I kind of pride myself on being a pretty good wrapper of hands. You know, gauze and tape. And so when people come by and watch, I shoo them away. You know, or
really?
If somebody's videotaping, I shoo them away because I don't want to give up those secrets.
You got a secret method to it?
I have it. Have you ever seen it done?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
All right. So everybody does the same thing. Everybody secures the wrists. Then they secure the thumb, and then they go up to the knuckles and they go over the knuckles a couple times, and then they do a figure eight, across the hand, and then they build that pad separately. The striking pad.
Mm-hmm.
By basically going over their own hand, from maybe the bottom of the fingertips all the way to the knuckles, slide it off of their own hand, and then put it on top of the fighter's hand, fold it over, so you've doubled that over, and you've made your pad. Then you secure the pad in, you go between the fingers, with the tape, and then you secure the entire wrap with tape. And I make my pad totally different.
Interesting.
And, you're really not supposed to pre-make the pad. But what I do is, the only reason that I kind of pre-make it is to save time. And I don't use my own hand to make the pad. Now, how would that make sense? I'm going to put this on another person's hand who doesn't have the same size hand, thickness hand, everything. So why would it make sense that the pad would be perfect for my fighter if I'm using my own hand as the guide?
Yeah, that's a good point, especially if you're making a knuckle pad for somebody like your boxer Daniel Maldonado, certainly smaller than you.
Right. Well,
featherweight fist.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about Daniel Maldonado's hand.
Okay.
Daniel Maldonado fought for the championship of the world in, I think it was November of 2006. And we were in Las Vegas. We were at the Orleans. The commission treated us very well there for the most part. They were very professional about the weight issues because the guy who was the champion at the time, his name was Jose Gonzalez. He had missed weight, 3 times. And I didn't want the kid to lose the title on the scale. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know how that happens,
right?
Don't you? Okay. And I don't know how much you know about boxing or don't. I'm not trying to treat you like you don't.
No, you're fine. You can feel safe in the knowledge that I'm a big boxing fan. I just about killed myself covering Mayweather Pacquiao for a month and a half. So
yeah. So what I did was I didn't want the kid to lose the title on the scale because it's kind of a hollow way to win a championship. You go in there and if you win, you get the title, and then if the champion beats you, the title's vacant because the champion missed weight. So I sat there for probably 3 hours and let the kid come back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until he essentially made weight. He might have been off by a tad, but I didn't want the kid to lose the, like I said, title on the scale. The commission was very good, but the point is, they weren't really watching really diligently, watching me wrap the kid's hands. And, they were coming in and out of the locker room and watching sporadically. So once I got his hands finished, they checked the hands and they were like, wait a minute. You got something in here. These are like bricks. I said, no, there's nothing in there but his hands. There's nothing in there but gauze and tape. And they said, well, no, you're gonna have to cut these off to do it over. I go, we ain't got that kind of time. It was on television. I said, they want us in the ring at a certain time. I said, you guys came in here, in and out walks. Well, you must have done something when we left the room. I said, yeah, I did do something. I finished wrapping his hand. I said, I'll tell you what you'll do. And I don't want to name the guy. He's a nice guy. And I said, look, what you can do is you can cut off one hand. Because your claim is that I have something in both hands, right? They checked the knuckle pad, and it was like, oh, my God, this knuckle pad's so hard. I can't believe this. You got to have something in there. I said, okay, well, then here's what we'll do. Since we're in Las Vegas, I'll bet you $100, number one, I got nothing in there. I'm trying to keep it light, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I said, I'll bet you $100 that I don't have anything in there. And number two, you can pick whichever hand it is, but I'm only going to cut off one hand. Because the claim is that I did it to both hands, right?
Right.
So they picked, I can't remember what hand they picked, but they picked one hand, they cut it off. Obviously, I had nothing in there. They were like, holy, how did you do that? I can't tell you. So I'm not telling you.
It's probably a good thing they were only in and out sporadically seeing what you were doing, huh?
Well, it is. I mean, they almost caught me in New York a couple months ago. I don't cheat. There's no cheating involved. But what's your first name again? I'm sorry.
Connor,
got it. What's your last name again?
Rebush.
Got it. Connor Rebush.
Yes, sir.
Connor, I don't do I would never do anything illegal because I respect the game and the fighters way too much. Way too much. If we do anything illegal, we train harder than the other people. You know what I mean? If we're going to get an edge, we're going to do it by training harder than other people.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to protect my fighters' hands. I would never, ever do anything to cheat, to harm another fighter. It's dangerous enough in there. So.
Absolutely.
But my point is, you want to talk about training, you want to talk about statistics. This is my kind of interview, then. Because,
oh yeah, that's.
I don't like to talk about the fluff.
That's the kind of stuff we do. I'll be honest with you. We tend to here on Heavy Hands. I've tended to prefer interviewing trainers and coaches over fighters because, boy, we watch the sport for the fighters, but the trainers don't tend to get the credit, and the trainers tend to know a lot more about why the fight tends to turn out the way it does.
It's like I boxed and kickboxed for years. My dad was a fighter. My dad was a trainer. My uncles were fighters, and my uncles were trainers. But, you don't really learn as much as a fighter as you do when you quit and become a trainer. And the reason for that is that, as a fighter, you only got to worry about one guy, yourself. As a fighter, you don't learn all the different styles and all the different, idiosyncrasies, eccentricities, phobias the fighters have,
Yeah.
You're just worried about yourself, So you learn far more. Unfortunately, you wish you knew all the stuff when you were a fighter that you know as a trainer.
You can go a long way on just a never say die attitude as a fighter. Trainer, you got to think about what's going into the preparation and everything a lot more than that. You got to think about why the guy has that never say die attitude, and you got to think about his mentality.
Well, that's a big thing. Is I train a young fighter named Ryan Martin. He's 12-0 with 7 knockouts. We're leaving for Texas tomorrow. We're fighting on the undercard of Canelo Alvarez and James Kirkland.
All right.
his manager used to fight for me, a kid named, I call him a kid, I mean, no disrespect to him, is a young man named Timothy Van Newhouse. And we were talking the other day, and I said, we need, as a trainer and as a team, we need to know what makes all of our fighters tick. We need to know what their motivation for the sport is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important because you figure out what buttons to push to motivate the fighter to train, to motivate the fighter to give you that extra, round in the gym, or that extra effort on the track, or that extra concentration when the fight's getting tough.
Absolutely, and I meant to ask you about that because we tend to think of trainers and coaches as in terms of technique. Is the guy's technique getting better? Did he seem strategically prepared for this fight? I think
certainly part of it.
What's that?
Certainly part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of people. Go on.
This is an apropos time to tell you something that was one of my dad's favorite sayings.
Uh-huh.
My dad's still around. He's 81 years old. He loves boxing. He, like I said, he was a trainer. At one time, he was a fighter himself. He used to say, you do all that training, and you do all that, conditioning, and you do all that technique work, and you do all that, fight planning. But at the end of the day, pardon my language, it's a fucking fight. And you fight from the inside out.
Absolutely.
So you've got to figure out that inside part.
And
if you don't have that inside part, all the outside parts ain't going to do you a damn bit of good.
For sure. And I've seen there's a highlight video floating around on YouTube of your corner work during Daniel Maldonado's fight with Jose Gonzalez that you mentioned earlier. And I have to say, it's almost like an inspirational speech sometimes in the corner from you. There's a lot of very supportive, motivational kind of speaking to your fighter. Do you think that's almost more important than training him technically, is getting his?
No, I don't think it's more important, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it can't be left on the shelf. You can't, that you got to bring that too. Because if you notice, I know what you're talking about. I gave him technical instructions when the technical instructions were necessary. Well, in the 11th and 12th round, you could take that technical instruction and throw it out the window. Because Gonzalez was tired, Daniel was tired, the fight was close, Daniel had gotten dropped in the fight. You needed to get, it had to come out. And I've been in other camps, and I see what other people do. My fighters know that every day I give them as much as they give me, so that when I asked Daniel to do something that night, he knew I was with him 100%. He lived with me for about a month and a half before that fight.
Wow.
So, it's almost like I said, you have to know what buttons to push, and if the fighter won't fight for you, you could push all the buttons you want. It ain't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, to me, kind of the greatest trainer of all time is Emanuel Stewart. By far.
Gotta love Emanuel Stewart's corner work.
Well, I knew Emanuel. I don't know if you realize I'm a trial lawyer. That's what I do for my job that pays.
Okay.
I hope that my job that pays me will be boxing trainer shortly. But I've got a thriving trial practice in personal injury. And Emanuel first started calling me for legal advice, I don't know, maybe 2002, 2003, and we became friends. And we talked a lot about boxing, and I don't copy anybody. I'm myself. But I see Emanuel Stewart in that corner. The most famous one was Lennox Lewis, with Mike Tyson.
Yeah, absolutely.
When he knew how dangerous Mike Tyson was, and he took it from the positive. He didn't say, hey, look, if you don't get this guy out of here, he's liable to catch you on the chin, and you're liable to be gone too. That's what he meant. I mean, I knew Emanuel well enough to know that's what he meant. He didn't mean, this guy ain't shit, you need to get him out of there. He had an advantage in that point in the fight, and he knew that, if Lennox Lewis didn't take advantage of that situation and get him out, he might have been sleeping himself.
And that's something I think. What that reminds me of is Rafael Cordero, who's the head coach over at Kings MMA. He was recently saying in an interview after Rafael dos Anjos upset everybody, won the lightweight championship in the UFC, and he was saying that he always talks to his fighters about confidence. He's always telling them what they can do, not what the opponent might do to them.
Right. Yeah, I never come from the negative. The only time you come from the negative, I think, is when something drastic is happening in there that may cost your fighter the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what we refer to at my gym as the mortal sins of boxing, like or striking. Because you're aware that I work with Stipe Miocic, Jessica I, Cody Garbrandt. I work with some UFC fighters too.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain mistakes that you can make in the ring or in the cage that will cost you the fight. And when I see those mistakes possibly being made, well, I have to say something to the fighter.
Right.
If that appears to be negative, well, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? If there's a particular punch a fighter's going to get caught with, or a particular mistake they're going to make, it's going to result in them being stopped. I'd like to tell them how great they are and how wonderful they are, but sometimes you have to say, look, if you continue to drop that right hand, you're going to get knocked out with that high kick. I can promise you that.
I like that trainer voice too.
Well, you can't. If you watch Daniel's video, I guess it's a pretty good example. Oh, man, you did your research, didn't you? If you talk the same way to the fighter all day long, every day, then it doesn't have the impact. Sometimes I'm calm in the corner, and okay, relax, breathe for me, beautiful round. Like if a guy's winning, I'm not begging him to knock the guy out. Like I have a kid. I don't know. Do you know who Antonio Nieves is yet?
I'm afraid I don't.
Damn, that's too bad. He's going to be the bantamweight champion of the world.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Antonio Nieves, you said.
Antonio Nieves, and he is 11-0 with 5 knockouts. He just fought his first 8-round fight in New York City about a month or so ago. And it was a main event. He fought at the World Resort Casino there in Queens. And he was winning the fights. Clearly winning every round, doing a good job of boxing against a granite chin survivor. So I didn't try to put the whip to him, and try to tell him to knock the guy out. Every single round he came back, he boxed a beautiful round of boxing each and every round. Sat him down on the stool. I said, what can I tell you, son? When your boxing's so beautiful. Just keep doing what you're doing.
And that's got to make him feel good, right?
So my point is that, that corner work, this is the thing about, I know we're going all over the place and you're probably not getting a very good interview.
No, this is fine. I love it.
But, there are guys who are excellent coaches in the gym. They're great on conditioning. They're great on technique. They're great on teaching skills. But that whole motivation thing, that's a born skill,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't. So just like I can't be a manual, but I'm me.
You got to find your own way to motivate your fighter.
You have to figure it out, and then at the same time, there's people that just don't have that. They're never going to have it. There's guys that are great on skills and conditioning and technique, but they don't really understand how the fight unfolds. They don't understand, what's really, really happening in there. They're not good on strategy. And that's terrible because you see guys that they give their life to boxing in the gym, and on fight nights, they just, they don't. It would be like Bill Belichick not knowing what plays to call.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, Pete Carroll doesn't know what plays to call. Here's a great example. He was a great coach. He was a great motivator at USC, and he was on the world stage and just committed what we call the mortal sins of boxing. That's the mortal sins of football. I played college football, by the way, and one of the mortal sins of football. Well, you're a football fan or no?
Not much of one, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is, you can't do anything without the football. You can't win without the football. You can't score a point without the football, right?
Right.
Most important thing in the game is having the football. And Pete Carroll gave that football up. It was, a mortal sin in the sport. A mortal sin in boxing, again, is exposing your chin excessively. If you don't throw that extra punch and knock that guy out, all right, well, maybe you get to knock him out later. But if you make that big mistake defensively, the fight's over.
That's the foundation.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, obviously solid defense is important, but again, you can't win without offense. But getting back to the coaching aspect of it, there's some guys that they won't be good cornermen. They're not good communicators. They're not good motivators. And maybe they're really not good on strategy. That's what separates, to me, the good trainer from the great trainer on fight night is not like being Floyd Mayweather's trainer, where your guy's winning the whole fight, or being even Manny Pacquiao's trainer in most instances, where your guy's winning the whole fight. When your guy is losing, when your guy is facing adversity, when your guy has been knocked down, when your guy has been cut, when your guy has been hurt, do you have the ability to find out how you can turn that fight around? Can you make the adjustment to turn the fight around as a trainer and communicate that to your fighter in 1 minute when you're under fire?
Are you an Ann Wolfe fan, Joe?
On certain levels, I am, yes. Mm-hmm.
She's got some of the meanest, most inspirational corner work around, especially when James Kirkland was having a rough night of it.
It's your destiny, nigga. Yeah, I remember. You took his heart, now take his ball.
Yeah.
I remember. What's interesting about Ann Wolfe, as you're talking to me, is after Ann Wolfe knocked out Vonda Ward, that most ridiculous knockout you've ever seen?
Yeah, a brutal knockout.
Right? I started training Vonda Ward. Oh. And Vonda Ward never lost a fight ever after that.
Well, she made a big defensive flaw in that fight, so that was almost an actual mortal sin.
Again, there you go, the mortal sin of boxing. It's like you give up that chin. You make those types of mistakes. The fight's over. You don't throw the jab enough. Okay, whatever. You don't punch to the body enough. Well, I have to throw you out of our gym. That's what we do. But okay, fine. But you decide to get cocky and expose that chin. You decide to throw that uppercut from too far outside. There you go. There's two mortal sins right there. You decide to throw that jab and drop it down to your knee. Mortal sin. And in MMA, you got way more mortal sins because there's way more ways to lose.
Yeah, I'm interested to know, actually, about your transition from boxing to MMA. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I would love to ask you more about that. Okay, wait, stop. Don't skip this break. I know you skip most of them. It's a podcast. It's not a radio show. You don't have to listen to the commercials. But if you follow my very simple instructions, you'll be doing a huge service to Heavy Hands, Pat, and myself. First, go to Stitcher.com or iTunes.com. You can use either of those services to subscribe to the show, which makes it really, really easy to listen to every episode and not have to go hunting for it on our confusing, badly designed website. Once you're there, give us a positive rating and a positive review. That means go to the little 5-star thing and click on the star all the way to the right. That's a 5-star rating. That's the best one you could possibly give us. And like 20 or 30 words about how you enjoy the show. It may not seem like much, but it's a huge help to us, and we really appreciate it. It helps us bring Heavy Hands to an ever-increasing audience, which is just good for everybody. So thank you for listening. Please take the time to give us a positive rating and review. Next time that you're on at your computer, at your phone, whatever, iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, search for Heavy Hands, give a positive rating and a review. Thank you. And now, back to the show. So, like I mentioned before the break, Joe, I wanted to ask you about your transition to mixed martial arts. You mentioned earlier you came from a boxing and a kickboxing background. Now, of course,
Right.
you're the boxing trainer over there at Strong Style MMA. We've got Stipe Miocic, Jessica I, Cody Garbrandt, as you mentioned. I believe Matt Brown is training there now. I don't know if you're working with him or not.
Matt Brown has been here, but Matt's kind of, I guess Marcus Marinelli's the head coach over there.
Okay, yeah.
Our families have been lifelong friends. His father just passed away the last couple of years, but he was 80-ish. My dad is 81. They grew up together as boys, so we've known each other all of our lives. So how that came to pass is in 2010, Marcus had called me on the phone and said, Joe, come down and just kind of audit my boxing program. Tell me what we need to do. So I went over there for a couple of weeks and then told Marcus, well, you need to get a boxing program. So I was running 2 gyms at that time myself. We had decided to merge the old school boxing club with Strong Style, the Strong Style fight team.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go to boxing events, we call ourselves the old school boxing club Strong Style fight team. And when we go to MMA events, we just call ourselves the Strong Style fight team. And truthfully, at first it was a difficult transition because I hated MMA.
Really?
I hated MMA. I mean, I can be very frank and honest because that's just the only way I can be. I still think. Well, let me ask you. You watch the sport, right? Obviously, you guys are. You guys love MMA. You love boxing.
If there's face punching, I am all over it. That's pretty much my rule of thumb.
So, what is the last skill that really needs to be developed in MMA?
I think most people would probably say striking.
Well, that's the damn truth. Because here's the thing. When you watch MMA, you watch all these guys that were college wrestlers,
yeah,
All-American wrestlers, high school wrestlers, world jiu-jitsu champions, okay? You didn't get one prime kid, and I say prime, you don't count James Toney and Ray Mercer, okay? You can't.
Are you sure? James Toney wasn't in his prime in that Randy Couture fight?
Yeah, sure. Prime steak, maybe. So my point is, you don't get any real prime strikers in MMA. You never hear Joe Rogan say, and now coming up to the ring, he was the 2014, 2013 USA boxing champion.
Mm-hmm.
Even the amateur, USA boxing champion. That's the true national champion.
Mm-hmm. National
Golden Glove champion. Don't hear it. None of that. You get these guys who have these boxing records like Fabio Maldonado, where my kid knocked him out in 35 seconds. Keep going.
Maldonado's record looks good until you actually look at it.
Correct. And, you boxed in Brazil. That's like saying that you were, a snow skier in Hawaii. Give me a break. So my point is that this is why when it was a difficult transition for me because I thought this is a wrestling match with sloppy striking.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looked like to me in the beginning. Now, I must admit, while I don't like it, I've learned a little bit about jiu-jitsu because, I'd only be ignorant not to. I'm in the gym every night. I watch Marcus and I oversee the full, full-on MMA sparring every Monday night. We do something different every day over there, obviously. But Monday night is full-on MMA sparring, and I've been watching it for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I forget some of the names of guys, but let's say, who is the guy he fought in? He's fought in the UFC. He's fought a lot in Bellator. He's a 170 pounder. He is 170 pounder. Fought in Bellator. Fought in the UFC. Real veteran, like a journeyman type guy.
So Joe Riggs? He just recently came back to the UFC.
Not Joe Riggs. Real journeyman type guy. The last time I saw him, he was in Bellator. Might have won the championship in Bellator, but always competed for it. White guy, American.
I'll look into it. I'm not sure.
But my point is, when I watch grappling, Ben Saunders. I like Ben Saunders.
Is Ben Saunders who you're thinking of?
Yes.
Oh, I'm embarrassed I didn't think of him right away. That's
like
Bloody
Ben
Elbow's
Saunders.
favorite fighter.
Who's the favorite fighter?
That's Bloody Elbow. That's the site that I write for. Well, we love
Right.
Ben Saunders around there.
Okay. Because the only exposure I have to your site really is, Steffi from Twitter and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
We corresponded back and forth. She did she do an interview with me and Stipe one year? I think she did.
She may have.
She might have. At any rate, but she's great. I like her a lot.
Yeah, she's great.
But I like watching a guy who's scrambling down there, who's working down there, who's striking down there. I couldn't imagine myself being a grappler, by the way. I mean, I had combined between boxing and kickboxing, I had like 67 fights. Most of them were boxing fights, amateur.
Uh-huh.
I quit fighting when I was in my last year of law school. I figured my brain was safer in the library than in boxing. But that's the kind of guy I like. Like Damian Maia, I understand he's great at what he does. If I need a sleep aid, I will put in one of his fights and watch it. You know what he said one time?
What's
said
that?
Something one time that just made my skin crawl.
What's that?
He said, I don't want to harm my opponent. Something like that. He said something to the effect of, and I used to say it all the time in the gym, just to mock kids who, and again, not mock, but just tease.
I think he said the
We're not
perfect
gonna
fight
get
is
to
one
the
in which he doesn't have to hurt his opponent.
Something like that. Where, I just want to do enough to win the bouts. I don't need to hurt my opponent. Well, you train a fighter that way, you're going to get your fighter hurt for real.
Yeah, definitely.
But so getting back to the point, I really didn't like MMA because I just thought it was the striking was so sloppy to me. It was unbelievable. So what I did do was I did start to watch a ton of it, and I studied takedown defense because my job is to keep our guys standing and winning. So I kind of consider myself, I guess, a self-taught expert in takedown defense.
Sprawl and brawl.
Well, the sprawling, that's natural for these guys that are wrestlers. So I never had to tell a guy to sprawl. Because every wrestler, that was their answer. However, if you notice, oh, by the way, my whole family was boxers for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the last Delguyd boxer. We had a Delguyd that was Big Ten champion in wrestling at 197. Over at Northwestern. He was a two-time state runner-up in Ohio, which obviously is a great wrestling state.
Mm-hmm.
My other two young cousins were also state qualifiers, and they were 5th and 7th in the state. So I've seen my share of wrestling. Never liked it. but the problem with the sprawl is oftentimes they sprawl, but they sprawl from the position that the wrestler sprawls from. My guys who I want to keep standing sprawl from the position that the striker sprawls from, which creates more space and an easier way to stay standing.
Can you point out what the difference is? What's the distinction?
Here's the difference. The difference. Is you got two young guys that wrestling is their nature, okay? And that goes for almost every MMA fight. And you can't. It's very difficult to take a grown man from college wrestling and say, okay, you've been involved in and I dare I say that wrestling's a combat sport, but that's another matter for another day. But you come from wrestling. You're an athlete who competes on the ground essentially, and now you have to stand up. most guys don't make that transition very well. Probably no better than I would have made the transition to the ground, you know. So I'm not finding fault with that necessarily. I'm joking about that. But two wrestlers, where are they standing? They're standing directly in front of each other, right?
Right. Very close.
Directly in front of each other. If I'm standing, and you know, have you fought? Do you have a background in training or anything?
I train. I have yet to compete, though. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. So good. Then you train. That's good. All right. You and I are in the cage. You want to take me down. I step to the right. I step to the left. I step back. I pivot. We have all kinds of different angles that we use in the gym that have all kinds of different names.
Mm-hmm.
Again, some of the secrets, but I will give up one secret in a minute. So, if I'm not standing directly in front of you, you're not shooting, are you?
No.
I
gotta be facing you, right? So are you saying? Do you think that footwork is key to takedown defense in MMA?
No question. That's why when I hear Joe Rogan call takedown defense reverse wrestling, I'm going to punch him right in the face. That's not what you're doing. You are using boxing footwork, the use of range that a boxer uses. Reverse wrestling. Reverse my ass.
It's anti-wrestling.
Exactly, it is, and so that we have our guys using more lateral movement, more angles, and now when you go to that, and again, please, you know, excuse my ignorance, when you go to that cross face or, you know, any of those wrestling type moves that guys use to keep guys off their hips, well, you're in a more advantageous position to use that.
You got more leverage from that angle.
Well, yeah, that's correct. And they have less leverage trying to get into your hips. So, so yes, there's a lot of footwork that we use that has nothing to do with wrestling, Joe Rogan, that, you know, is keeping people standing up. And this is what the angle in the Joe Rogan story I'll give you. You know, when Stipe Miocic fought Shane Del Rosario.
Great fight. I just rewatched it.
Okay.
I was going to ask
so
everybody if they remembered how great it was.
You'll remember this. God rest that kid's soul. What a tough kid he was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he was a southpaw, you know, the rule of thumb when you fight the southpaw as the right-hander is you stay to the left, away from their big left hand or their big left kick. And you line up your own kicks and your own punches by stepping around that lead foot of the southpaw. So we go to an angle that we call a Pacquiao. It's a very deep angle where you pivot away from the man, you give ground so that, you know, you can't get taken down, and in boxing so that you can change the angle and not have to engage a guy, you know, just standing straight in front of him. So you would have heard me hollering to Stipe, "Go to that Pacquiao!"
I did hear it. I was actually going to ask you about it.
Okay, so what happens is, what the left side of Pacquiao did, I told Stipe, and you know, listen, I got way more experience than these kids. They're awesome athletes. Stipe Miocic, he went to the same high school I did, by the way. We have the same background in terms of where we're from in the city of Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in the inner city just like I did, in the Collinwood area, very tough section. And then he moved to the suburbs and went to East Lake North High School, which is where I went. But I'm 55 years old. I'm way older than Stipe. He grew up with my little cousins.
Okay.
So I watched him play high school football, high school wrestling, you know, everything. So I knew him. But the point is that I told him in camp, I said, this guy is, and I still believe this, by the way, when I watched him unload that left high kick weighing 230 pounds, I said, man, it's a bad motherfucker here, boy. Woo! And I told him before the fight, I said, Stipe, he's going to be even faster than you imagine. You know, and this was like Stipe's, third fight in the cage, maybe? Not in the cage, but in the UFC?
I think so. Second, I want to say second. It may have been his third,
the first fight was Joey Beltran, and I was at a boxing match. I might have been with we used to have Chris Lozano from Bellator.
Uh-huh.
And I might have been out of town with Chris Lozano. I think I was.
Maybe it was Phil DeFries after that Joey Beltran fight? Yep.
The one where
Joey Beltran
in Nebraska.
Phil DeFries, and then it was Shane Del Rosario. So it was his third fight in the UFC.
All right. So you know, I'm telling him, I'm saying, look, you know, and another thing is that, you know, this was the best athlete. I thought they thought Stipe was going to lose that fight. So I said to him, we need to keep going to that Pacquiao, which means that you're gonna pivot to your left, away from the man, and then you're gonna fire back. Well, Del Rosario wouldn't be able to reach him with that left foot, now would he?
Right.
In a southpaw stance, because we're walking away from his left foot,
mm-hmm.
and that's when Joe Rogan made that comment where he said. Mike Goldberg asked him, what's the Pacquiao? He said, I don't know. I think that's when you talk a lot about gay marriage. Because, you know, Pacquiao made that kind of homophobic reference to gays. And then, so what I did was I tweeted Joe Rogan. And because me and Joe Rogan have a little history.
You got a Twitter beef going on with Joe Rogan?
No, it wasn't really a Twitter beef because I'm not a big Twitter guy. I go on, don't get me wrong, and I tweet sporadically. And it's almost always positive. You know, here's the problem with the internet. Every person who knows nothing about boxing or MMA gets to state their opinion.
Boy, that's absolutely the case in the post-Mayweather-Pacquiao era.
Yeah. So, you know, yesterday, you know, I'm on Facebook a lot, too. I do some video blogs on Facebook. I don't know if you've ever seen those. You laugh your ass off on those. I did one Pacquiao Mayweather on Saturday morning. But, I tweeted, oftentimes camps use code words for, you know, techniques.
Right.
The Pacquiao is one of them. You, sir, are too worried about gay marriage.
What did he say to that?
So, what did he say to that?
Yeah.
It got retweeted about 7,000 times. He didn't say a word. so then when we were supposed to lose to Roy Nelson, we went into that arena in Canada, and they wanted Roy Nelson to win in the worst way. I mean, they were big country, big country, big country. Well, I was saying big country too, but I didn't have the re at the end.
Oh my God!
So and nothing against Roy Nelson, by the way. These fans,
sure.
If they could have thrown stuff at us, they would have.
Oh, sure,
So,
yeah.
You got to watch what I consider one of the best exhibitions of boxing and takedown defense in the heavyweight division in years.
Yeah,
he boxed the living shit out of Roy Nelson.
And I don't disagree with you. And it was a hell of a performance in terms. A lot of people think of boxing as lots of movement, just touching the guy, staying away. And Stipe knew when to move, and he knew when to sit down in his punches. And he really was stinging Roy Nelson coming in and then moving off to angles. It was a beautiful performance.
Fully prepared, 100%, and on short notice at that. Because we were supposed to fight that Samoan kid whose name escapes me. And then they asked us about 3 weeks before the fight if we'd fight Roy Nelson. And, you know, my first reaction was, he's too slow, you know. So, and he was knocking everybody out with that overhand. Everybody was going to sleep, remember?
Yeah.
I don't know, 4 or 5 guys in a row went to bed with that overhand.
Absolutely.
And he didn't hit Stipe with that overhand one time because Stipe used a different angle that we use, which is much like a Pacquiao, that we call a quarter. And what it is it's not a deep angle, but like you said, it's a short angle. So that we turn the opponent's at a disadvantage because we've changed the angle, and then we hit him with a combination. And then we go to a second combination, and that's what you saw in that fight.
Mm-hmm. And it was always that. That seemed to be kind of Stipe's go-to move, was that short pivot to the right and then dropping the right hand on Roy as he tried to turn to face him.
Another thing my dad used to always say, you know, is if a guy gives you something in there, keep taking it.
Mm-hmm.
If he keeps giving you that quarter in that right hand, keep taking it. You know, we knew that as Stipe went to that right-sided quarter, how's he going to get a hit with that overhand? The man's right hand is to your left, obviously. You step to the right. They reach with the right hand. They miss you. You can counter with anything you want.
Mm-hmm. And Stipe did.
Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, you know, I to be honest with you, though, love Stipe to death, known him since he was a boy. I'm telling you that you haven't scratched the surface of Stipe yet. I'm telling you, you haven't seen a scratch of the surface yet.
In terms of potential?
No, in terms of what he can do. He hasn't put it all together yet.
Wow.
I'm telling you, if you, I mean, it's amazing to me. You know, I think like a lot of athletes, he resorts to instinct in there and really doesn't. It's not as cerebral for him as I would like it to be sometimes. You know, it would be wonderful to be that good of an athlete. You know, I wish I would have been that good of an athlete. I was always thinking about stuff because, you know, I was short on height and reach and speed and whatever else, you know. But he's got a full. Let me say this to you. I don't think that any athlete in the heavyweight division is as good of an athlete as he is. I don't think so.
And I've seen clips of some of the conditioning work that he does. It's pretty damn impressive.
I don't think. Now that's conditioning. That's not athletic ability. You know what I mean?
So how do you define athletic ability then?
Well, I mean, perfect example. Junior Dos Santos is a super tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is otherworldly in terms of, you know, heart, you know, fearlessness. He's got 2 dukes and he uses them. He can't do much else in there. Not very fast. You know, you don't have to worry about him taking Stipe down ever. You know, with what the one takedown he got was the trip, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You know, but Stipe, you know, he can wrestle, he can kickbox, he can box. He's got. Listen, as far as footwork's concerned and movement, you know, in the Roy Nelson fight, he certainly proved that he can fight. You know, he can certainly box better than anybody in the cage.
Yeah.
You know, in the heavyweight division. You know,
yeah, I don't disagree with that.
You know, I don't know how much you know about Cody Garbrandt, but you better know something.
I was very impressed by Cody Garbrandt's UFC debut.
Cody Garbrandt, to me, it's just a shame that Dana White has hitched his wagon to Conor McGregor. Okay, because Cody Garbrandt's American, and Cody Garbrandt can do things. I don't know. I've watched Conor McGregor quite a bit. I think Cody Garbrandt can do more. He just doesn't have as many fights in the UFC yet.
Wow.
I mean, Cody Garbrandt is unreal.
How long have you been working with Cody?
Well, I just caught tags for Cody last week. But I worked with Cody as an amateur in 2011, 2012. We are very close.
Very cool.
You know, he's with Team Alpha Male now.
Mm-hmm.
In Sacramento. He comes home, and when he comes home, I work with him on his boxing, and his uncle, who started him in boxing, Robert Meese, worked with him as well. He is going to start doing some cross-training with us for this next fight.
Really?
So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm telling you that is an explosive, athletic, exciting, powerful fighter. He's something else.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I'm not saying it because I have a personal friendship with him that is beyond friendship. I mean, I love him like my son. But it's unbelievable. Even in 9th grade, he was a state wrestling champion. 9th grade.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that? I mean, I know it happens, but then he decides he wants to box. Then he goes 32-1 as an amateur boxer.
I did not know that. I have to be honest with you. I didn't even know he was an amateur.
Yeah, absolutely. But people were begging me, Joe, you've got to talk him into this boxing. Forget about this cage shit. You got to have him box. My God. I said, look, this is what he does. This is what he wants to do. You know, and then, you know, he goes and just does a tremendous job as an amateur fighter. You know, and obviously you see he's undefeated with all knockouts as a pro MMA fighter. So he can't. He's just tremendous. I mean, it's not even potential. I mean, he has these skills and abilities, and they're just going to be on display shortly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Do you mind, Joe, if I ask you a couple things about specific techniques? We got Stipe's fight with Mark Hunt coming up very soon. By the sounds of it, you're not going to be there in his corner this time around?
Unfortunately, I can't be in two places at one time, so no, I won't be there.
Got to be at Canelo Kirkland, which is bound to be a good show, too.
Right.
One thing that really stands out to me watching Stipe fight is his feinting. He feints better than, and I think that's probably key to his success with his boxing in the heavyweight division. He feints probably better than any of the heavyweights out there that I've seen.
Yeah, it's a boxing skill, so of course he's going to do it better than anybody else.
Is that something that you focus on a lot? How do you teach a guy to feint? Or what's your philosophy when it comes to that?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of ways. I'm looked upon by many people as an offensive coach. But that's not fair, because I do a lot about defense. And, if you want to get control of what's going on in there, let's say the bell rings, it's the first round. You're in the cage. You want to get an idea. You want to get a beat on what this guy wants to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're moving around him. You use those feints because one thing is you get reactions out of the guy. Does he react back? Does he put his head down? Does he, what does he do? Does he cover up? And another thing is when you're feinting, there's the threat that you are coming forward, and it keeps the guy. If that guy had planned on coming forward, there might be some hesitancy there. So, you feint up top. Maybe you shoot and take the guy down.
Sure.
There's a million things you can do with it. You feint and that guy goes straight back. The next time you feint, you're going to shoot, that long one too, that he shoots so well. So, feinting does a lot of things. It could set up an offense. It can, keep a guy from coming forward. Defensively, it's, and it's a basic skill in boxing.
And yet it's not one we see a lot of.
Wrestlers do it too. Wrestlers
True.
feint like they're going to shoot and then shoot.
True, but we don't see a lot of very good striking feints. I think in MMA, it tends to really stand out when a guy does it well.
Again, it's a boxing skill. You don't see very good boxing skills in MMA.
And there's one kind of feint that Stipe does that really stands out to me. Like he'll feint a right hand and go over to his left hip, and then throw the right hand immediately after it. It's almost like he tends to have these hesitated punches where he will look like he's punching and then throw the punch after either you expect it or after he sees that you haven't reacted to it coming. Is that one of those things that you instruct, or is that more of just a thing that Stipe likes to do on his own?
No. We make it look at boxing. He's a from scratch boxer. We taught him to box from scratch. So yeah, he learned. It's a learned technique, but you know how it goes. If you taught a guy of average athletic ability the same technique, they wouldn't be able to use it as well.
Sure.
And he's just such a superior athlete that's what you get.
As far as footwork, I think Stipe's the Roy Nelson fight that you mentioned before, probably his finest performance. It was just an absolutely flawless fight, and his footwork in particular, his movement was, and not extraneous movement, not too much movement, but just nice, precise movement and lots of it to make sure he was in the right positions. And I think we've all seen him move a little bit less, significantly less so in the Gonzaga fights, in the Junior Dos Santos fight in particular. Do you change that kind of approach from fight to fight? Do you kind of build what kind of footwork you're going to use into the game plan, or is that some other kind of development on Stipe's part?
No, you build it into the game plan. You do. We were just something about that, the concentration of the whole camp. Everybody involved. Pablo Castro, myself,
the Nelson camp,
Marcus, Steve Kindness. We really. Maybe it was because we had a short notice situation. He was in camp training for someone else, but then all of a sudden you're fighting the main event, against, this guy who's on a roll.
Mm-hmm.
So, that footwork was essential, because if you don't stay away from that right hand, you're going to have problems.
Right.
But you certainly tailor-make the techniques you're going to use for the fight that you have next. No question.
So how about Mark Hunt? What's the thing to watch out for from Mark Hunt?
Well, I mean, I think Mark, at this point, I've watched Mark Hunt, since he was in the K1, 15 years ago.
Mark Hunt's been fighting a long time.
Mm-hmm. And people see Mark Hunt and they basically see an older fat guy. I mean, I'm not trying to be, trying to ridicule the man, but he's older and he's overweight. But he maintains that power, that short punching power.
Mm-hmm.
And Stipe, has all the long tools. I think what we're going to see is Stipe use the jab and use the straight right hand at long range. He's going to use angles. I don't think Mark Hunt's going to be able to find him with those short power shots.
How does Mark Hunt, a preparation for a guy like Hunt differ from preparation for a guy like Nelson? Because obviously we saw Mark Hunt versus Roy Nelson and in some ways similar fighters, which is why people were excited for that fight. Two knockout artists, but you have to say Mark Hunt's striking, with that deep kickboxing background and everything, it's much more dynamic than Roy's.
No disrespect to Roy Nelson, but he was kind of a one-trick pony at
Sure.
that time.
Yeah.
I said, look, stay to the right and beat the guy up, okay? Walk away from the right hand, beat him up.
And it's obviously going to be there's got to be more layers to it for a guy like Mark Hunt.
Listen, Mark Hunt is going to want to get close enough to hit Stipe with, that short right hand, that short hook. You never lose the instinct to be a leg kicker when you're a K1 fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, as much as I love boxing, as much as I, preach boxing, I tell all my fighters, all my cage fighters, all my MMA fighters, UFC fighters, the leg kick is the greatest weapon of all.
And Stipe's got some
There's no question.
Vicious leg kicks.
And that's the thing about Stipe's vicious leg kicks. We haven't seen enough of them. Well, put it to you this way. When he was shooting that 1-2 and Junior Dos Santos was dropping back out of range, if Stipe had thought to leg kick him at that point, Junior Dos Santos would have been defenseless at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He was wobbling. He was hurt. He was dropping out of range, but he wouldn't have been out of range for Stipe's long leg kick. And I think it could have made a difference in whether that man got stopped or not. I mean, stopping that man is, that's another issue too. But
and this is really fascinating to me to hear because with Stipe Miocic, we've got a top 10, potentially top 5 UFC heavyweight, a guy who is at the peak of his division.
Potentially top 5.
Oh, top 5.
5 guys better than him.
Top 5 UFC heavyweight. He's at the peak of his division, and we're still talking about.
Ready? Here's the truth. This is it. This is all there is.
Yeah.
Kane, Junior, Stipe. Then after that, it's another class of fighter.
I don't think that's unfair. Now that I'm thinking of my top 10 in my head.
There's another class of fighter after that.
Oh, Verdum. We got Verdum.
Oh, yeah, we got Verdum. Listen, he's too small for them guys. I don't think. Could Verdum make 205?
Oh, I don't know about that. Okay, so.
Now, to be honest with you, I kind of lost track of Verdum. Because wasn't he next?
Well, he just beat Hunt. He's the interim champ right now.
He's the interim champ.
Yeah, I don't know how much weight that. I don't know how much weight that
honor.
carries.
What an honor.
I
You
know.
what that is? You know what that's like? You're a single man or you're married?
I'm in a relationship. I'm not married though.
Okay, you're in a relationship. Well, let's pretend you were a single man,
Okay.
not in a relationship.
Okay.
You're the guy who gets to have sex with the girl next. Okay? Interim champ. Get the hell out of here. Interim champ. You know what I would do if Dana White handed me the interim championship belt? I'd say, Dana, with all due respect, let's just let me be the number 1 contender and let me go whoop Kane's ass.
Yeah, that's all an interim belt really is a certified number 1 contender.
I wouldn't even hold that belt. Interim belt. That's like like to be the WBA champion of the world. Okay. Are you familiar with the WBA?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Would you want to be the WBA champion?
I don't know if I want to be any of the sanctioning body's champions at this point, to be honest.
Here's why you won't want to be the WBA champion.
Yeah.
They have a super champion.
Yeah, and a silver champion and an international champion.
If I can't be the super champion, then I don't want to be a champion. Give me a break. The super champion. I'm like, how much credibility can you lose? This is my take on these, the sanctioning bodies. We have the WBC, we be collecting. The WBA, we be asking. The IBF, I be felonious. It's all a bunch of bullshit.
Well, what do they make? $20,000 per belt? I mean, you can't blame them for cranking out more belts, huh?
Sanctioning bodies are beautiful things, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Sanctioning fees.
Oh, yeah.
So, but getting back to Stipe, I think, honest to God, Verdum's a good athlete. He is. He's a good athlete. And I forgot about Verdum. I honestly think, though, and I think Verdum, honestly, I do think, I forgot about Verdum. I joke a lot. I forgot about Verdum. Verdum is good. I still think Stipe could beat Verdum. Honestly, Stipe proved in the loss to Dos Santos that he could certainly beat Dos Santos, Yeah. It wasn't like
I think
Dos
that's fair.
Santos ran him out of the cage. I mean, a lot of people thought Stipe won the fight.
It was a very competitive fight.
And, the guys, the people that scored the fight 4-1 should be shot. That's just ridiculous. But you're going to have that in boxing. You're going to have that in UFC. I think you have it probably even more in UFC because, there's fewer fighters. There's fewer championships. People tend to, admire champions, and he was a former champion and a good guy. People like him. I talked to him after the fight. He was a nice kid.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, I mean, it's hard to dislike Junior Dos Santos, even if you're fighting against him. You gotta shake his hand afterward.
Afterward. Pull his eyes out beforehand, but afterwards.
Don't go in there with the Damian Maia approach. I got one more question for you about Stipe, and then I'll let you go. I tend to think of fighters. Sorry?
In no hurry.
I tend to think of fighters in terms of styles, like categorizations. I like to think of like outfighters, counterfighters, boxer punchers. It seems that from what you've been saying, you tend to think of Stipe, you might classify him more as an all-terrain fighter. Do you think that, is it possible for him to do all, take various approaches to boxing, or is there one kind of thing you think he does better than the rest?
I obviously have watched Stipe very closely over the last 5 years. I consider him more of like a boxer puncher first, and here's why I say that first. My position, and I will never change my position until the game changes, is that everybody is pretty good on the ground. Everybody comes with that. Again, we've talked about this already. Comes with that boxing, that wrestling, rather pedigree, that that grappling pedigree. Well, I think Stipe should go to his stand-up first. He should be considered a stand-up fighter first because he's superior to the other guys in the stand-up. It's like if you were going to a knife fight and you could bring a gun, would you bring it?
Yeah, I think I would.
You wouldn't go to the knife first. You'd go to the gun first if you had it. And, I think that our fighters have superior striking techniques. Look, there's guys like Donald Cerrone Donald Cerrone's a good striker. Mm-hmm. But it was proven that at a certain range, Donald Cerrone's not a good striker. Nate Diaz went to a boxing range and beat him up.
Yeah. Definite limitation for
Cerrone.
Cerrone.
It bothered me because I like Donald Cerrone. I enjoyed watching him fight in the WEC. I enjoyed the WEC, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I like the WEC better than any of the other organizations that have ever been out there, including the UFC.
And you know what? I think there are probably a lot of fans still who'll be happy to hear you say that. WEC never die.
You know, so Stipe is a great wrestler. He has just vicious ground and pound. I mean, vicious ground and pound. I mean, when you look back at what he did before Shane Del Rosario, wow, really? That was, I mean,
and very much, that strikes me as very similar to his boxing. When I watch him take an angle and then hit Roy Nelson with a right hand off of that angle and then follow with a combination, it strikes me as being almost identical to him throwing Shane Del Rosario's legs out of the way and coming down with a punch as he falls into side control. He's still finding these angles for punches on the ground. It's almost like he's got a boxer's mentality to ground and pound too.
It may be, but I could tell you that when you get a guy at a disadvantage like that, Pablo Castro and Marcus Marinelli, they want the guy gone.
Yeah. What did they say? They said, "Give me 2 minutes
gone.
of hell." They said 2 minutes of hell right now.
Well, that's what Pablo literally says out loud.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that instruction?
That's what I'm saying. I heard him shout it during the Shane Del Rosario fight.
He did. Because what happens with me is the minute the guy falls on the ground, I either mimic what the other two coaches are saying because I don't know shit about it, or I will see something in there like a knee to the body that someone else doesn't see, But yeah, so they take over from there and they want the guy out of there. I mean, Marcus's coaching style is vicious.
And that's what's really crazy. You watch Stipe Miocic fight, you see him outboxing people, and then suddenly he gets a takedown, and he's just as fearsome from the top position. It's almost like he's always got that ace up his sleeve.
Well, let me change the subject now and ask you a question.
Sure.
Okay. What type of skills and techniques would you say, in a perfect world, would beat Ronda Rousey?
Oh. Well, running at her with a flying knee in the first 8 seconds has been proven not to work. I would say to beat Ronda, I think you have to be a good enough clinch fighter to contend with her in the clinch. And then I think you'd have to be able to box off the back foot.
Where else?
Well, I think a lot of people tend to focus a little too much on their submission defense. Like it's almost as if...
Absolutely. Hey, listen, once she engages you, good night, goodbye, adios, amigo.
Yeah, it's almost like you're acknowledging that she's gonna grab your arm.
Okay. Once you decide that your hip meets her hip, good night, adios, amigo.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that somebody is going to have to give her a tremendous amount of movement on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Maybe make her reach. Maybe make her make mistakes. Maybe use the jab to kind of punish her a little bit. Maybe swell her up. Take her a little bit longer. Maybe even be Mayweatherish in terms of don't be so fan friendly. Do a little bit of excess movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this girl's the girl to do it, but the girl that has that particular skill set is in our house.
You think it's Jessica Ai?
She has that skill set. There's no question about that. The skill set to beat her, and again, she's a tremendous fighter, okay? Ronda Rousey is a tremendous fighter.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
She's a tremendous athlete. Anybody who says any different is out of their bloody mind. But the specific skill set to beat her is a boxer, mover, counterpuncher, leg kicker mentality. Because I don't care. Name any girl in the whole division. If they decide to play her game, they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Nobody has even attempted. All right, obviously, I'm friends with Sarah McMahon. Sarah McMahon at least had the right idea. She tried to shoot that jab and that straight right hand down the middle. But then
most
she didn't have the other skills.
Yeah, and most of the women in the division, I just think, aren't suited for it. It's either aggression or it's nothing happening.
Okay, so who is the woman in the division that could possibly be suited for it?
It's got to be Jessica Ai. Betch Kohea might be a little more competitive than people are thinking, but I don't think Betch is really there yet.
I don't know enough about her.
I don't think she's there yet. She only started training in 2012. She's pretty damn good considering, but she's a novice.
But I didn't want to leave her out of the conversation because, she's gonna get by Miocic Tate in July. Now, it won't be an easy fight, but she'll get by Miocic Tate. I have all the confidence in the world in Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
Just everybody else is coming straight in, and they're doing what they do. That who's the girl? Who's the girl who did a nice job of Ronda at one point? Had her in neck crank.
Oh, that was Liz Carmouche.
Yeah, Liz Carmouche, tough. She did a great job. For as long as she lasted. Sarah at least had a little bit of an idea about trying to get her hands on her in terms of punches.
Miocic survived 3 rounds in their second go.
Well, we'll look at that, when the time comes for to get a little bit more ready for Miesha and then, look at the Sarah Kaufman, because Miesha fought Sarah Kaufman, right?
Let's see, Miesha, oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
I would expect that she would have, maybe in Strikeforce or something.
Oh, she has fought Sarah Kaufman. I'm almost certain of it. Yes, she lost Sarah to her Kaufman once, actually.
So, but my point is that, you want to talk about skills and techniques and, the coaching aspect of it. Like, we talked about a bunch of things this morning, but that is the specific skill set. And she has that specific skill set.
Where are you guys looking to go with Jessica Eye? Where do you think, where do you think she has room to improve to be a better potential threat to Ronda Rousey?
Well, I think she continues to develop that movement that she uses so well, mm-hmm. and use it specifically for. Listen, I know that Ronda Rousey's striking has improved. Okay, she works, with a good camp. Oh gosh, what's her trainer's name? It's escaping me right now.
Edmund Taverdian.
That's right. Right. He's a member of that Armenian contingent there in Glenwood.
Yeah.
Was it California?
Glendale, California.
California. Yeah. And they have he's trained a lot of great fighters and he's an excellent trainer, but that's not her nature. Her nature is what she does: rush the girl, get the girl on her hip, slam her to the ground, and look for your submission. If she thinks she's going to stand up with Jessica, she's got another thing coming.
And even Ronda's boxing is more suited to closing that gap and getting to that range. She's look
at and listen, she's not supposed to. If her bread's buttered with grappling and jiu-jitsu and judo, by all means go to it. But if Jessica takes her into those later rounds using the jab, using the leg kicks, giving her motion, we don't know what she's going to be like in those later rounds because when she did fight Miesha, they were doing that wrestling thing. If she tries to use that storm Jessica with the quadruple jab right hand and smash her up against the cage, Jessica's going to be gone. She's going to step around her right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a mystery as to what's going to happen there. The issue is going to be how does the fight play out? I would just I'd love to see what Ronda looks like in the 4th round, absorbing some leg kicks, absorbing the jab, absorbing some hard straight right hands. But don't get me wrong, I expect her to be gut tough. I have no doubt in my mind she will be gut tough. I don't think Jessica's going to hit her on the jaw and she's going to quit.
Sure.
She's a champion. She's a champion. The question is going to be, is she going to be able to deal with that specific skill set that everybody recognizes is what would give her trouble? And there's really only one woman at 135 who, possesses those skills.
I
love the new 115-pound world champion.
Oh,
Johanna.
Yes. Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Yeah.
That's my girl, man.
Yeah, she's a killer. Do you think Miesha Tate's kind of maybe like a precursor, like a test to see how Jessica would, Misha's obviously not Ronda. She's got a different skill set, but it's similar in some ways. She's looking to close that gap and wrestle. She definitely doesn't want to be outboxed and out-angled at range. Do you kind of see that as a litmus test for to see if Jessica's ready for the champ?
I think that's what it is. It's an eliminator, and it proves as just a de facto test like that.
Mm-hmm. So if we see Jessica outbox Miocic Tate, good chance she might be able to do the same to Ronda.
Well, I don't see them exactly the same, just because obviously Ronda Rousey's so explosive.
Yeah.
Miocic Tate's a little bit less explosive, and I think Miocic is a little bit more comfortable with her hands, so that maybe she would try to fight with her hands a little bit longer. So, but I mean, you're right. It's a good test. It's a good test, no question.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
and it's a competitive fight. It's a competitive fight that Jessica's going to win, but it's a competitive fight.
Well, I'm glad to hear you got the confidence in your fighters. We're really looking forward to Stipe Miocic versus Mark Hunt this weekend. Is there, before I let you go, is there somewhere that you want people to be able to find you if they want to find you on social media? Or
Yeah, you can find me at Joe Delguyd on Twitter or Old School Boxing Club on Twitter. My Facebook page is Joseph Anthony Delguyd. It's all boxing. There's also an Old School Boxing page as well.
Okay.
I'm Joe Delguyd on Instagram as well.
Okay. Well, fantastic. We got all kinds of places to find you. I don't think I even have a media presence that widespread. I'm supposed to be promoting myself. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that'll just about do it for the show as well. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this, the 50th episode of Heavy Hands. Again, if you want to help support the show, you can find us on iTunes and on Stitcher. We're trying to get on SoundCloud in the near future as well, so lots of platforms through which to subscribe and download the episodes. You can also find the show on heavyhandspodcast.com. While you're there, why not drop a little money in our donate bin? That could help us out, help keep this show on the air. We appreciate your patronage. As always, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Joe Delguyd, and if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.